Today, I will be attempting something that no other YouTuber has ever successfully achieved, and that is explaining all of the menu options of a Baofeng UV5R type radio without boring anyone to death. As I already mentioned, today I will be going over all 40 menu items and options in a Baofeng UV5R. Not just a UV5R, many radios have the same menu options. Some have a few more, some are missing a few options. But I will be explaining how to get into the menus, what all 40 of the different menu options do, why you would or would not want to use them. This applies to a Baofeng UV5R, all flavors of the Baofeng UV5R, Baofeng BFF8HP, Retevis, Radioddity, BTech, even some of the Wouxun radios have similar menus, and the operation of the menus items is very similar. My demonstrator unit will be my very first. 6 years old, my old classic Baofeng UV5R has been off-road with me literally hundreds of times, pretty much every weekend for the last 6 years. This radio cost me $23, and it still works just as well as it did the day that I bought it. Now, some people will leave a knee-jerk reaction comment saying something to the effect of,
"That radio is nothing but cheap Chinese junk."
No doubt you've seen these comments on other videos, YouTube videos, my YouTube videos, all over YouTube, in many web forums, online forums. This seems to be the default knee-jerk reaction of some people. And when some people say this or leave this comment, what they really mean to say is, what they're trying to say is,
"I paid 10 times more for my radio and I feel stupid. But because of my social retardation, I don't know how to properly express my feelings of inadequacy."
So when you see these comments by people online forums on YouTube, just try to understand and remember that these people are idiots and you should point that out and make fun of them. So let's get started. Oh, I'm sure nobody wants to hear about this old digital dinosaur. Let me just get that out of the way. And yes, I do have the proper licensing to use that radio, so all you sad hams out there can take this opportunity to pull your panties out of your ass and move away from the keyboard. Okay, where was I before I started making fun of the idiots that leave stupid comments because they think they own the airwaves? Okay, so a quick refresher of how the menu items work. To get into the menu options, first you want to make sure that the radio is not locked. And if you look at my radio right now, you will see a tiny, itty-bitty little key or lock icon there, which means that the keypad is locked. If I try to do anything, it doesn't do anything. So to unlock the radio, I just press and hold the unlock key. You will see a tiny little blue lock there. Press and hold that for a few seconds. The radio is now unlocked, and the little locky key icon is gone. I am now free to press any buttons that I want and screw this radio up as much as I can. So the way the menus work is you press the menu button. This then brings you into the menus. You'll see a little number flashing here. That's the menu item number. Every menu option has a number. If you wait too long, it will time out and it will just return back to the main screen, which mine just did. Mine also just automatically locked again. Unlock, menu, right back where I was. And you can scroll up and down through the menu items using the up and down arrow keys. You may notice also that every key here on most radios has a little, in this case, blue set of letters. And that means that when you're in the menu options, if you press that button, it will take you to the corresponding menu item. Now, you may not know what those mean. That's why you're here, because I'm going to explain them all to you. But for example, number 2 has the little TXP that stands for transmit power. So if I was in the menus and I press the number 2 quick key, that would take me quickly to that menu item. Number 5, WN, quickly takes me to, if I do it right, the WN wide narrowband. Number 4, VOX, takes me to Vox, and so on. So you can either scroll through the menu items You can press a quick menu button, or you can press the number that corresponds to the menu item that you want to go to. So if you know that menu item 12 is what you want to go to, you just press 12 or 13, whatever number you want to go to, and it takes you to that number. Once you are in the menu item that you want to change, so I've pressed 2 to bring me quickly to the transmit menu. You'll see there's a little icon here. That means this is the menu item that you're on, but you can't change it yet. You're still in the scroll up and down mode. So if I wanted to change the transmit power, TXP, I would select that menu item and then hit menu again. Now the cursor moves down to here, indicating that I can now change that menu function. To change it, you just use the up and down arrow keys to go through whatever options are available. So for this menu option, transmit power, on this particular radio, I have a low and high option only. So I select the option that I want, I hit menu again, and that saves it. I can then hit exit or just wait a few seconds, and now I'm back to my home screen. So now that you know how to confidently get into the menus, one quick warning: do not change something if you don't know what you're changing. You probably don't know what you're changing. That's why you're here watching this video. That's a good thing. But if you're not sure what a menu item is, don't change it. Okay, let's let the fun begin. I'm going to hit menu. Menu item 0. The list starts at 0. Menu item 0 is the squelch setting. Squelch is to set a level so that you don't hear static all the time. If you had no squelch at all you would hear is static, and if the squelch is too high, you may not hear people that are talking from far away. So I generally set mine at around 5, although on the Baofeng radios, the squelch is not very sensitive. It tends to be either on or off. So as a final example of how to use the menus, I'm going to show you what it sounds like with no squelch. So I'm going to hit menu again to select it. I'm going to use the down arrow key to turn it off. 0 squelch, menu again. And now all I get is static. So I can hit menu again. I'm on squelch, hit menu again to select it. Turn it up. Menu again to confirm it. And now it's squelching out that noise. That is menu option 0. Menu option 1, step. This determines how much the channel or the frequency goes up or down when you're in VFO mode and you hit the up and down arrow button. So when you're scanning. So every time the frequency changes, either by you hitting a button or when you're scanning, the step menu option determines how much it changes. So right now it's set at 25K. If I change it to 10K, hit menu again to save it, go back. Now when I hit the up and down arrow, you'll see that the frequency increase is only 10 kilohertz. Menu option number 2, transmit. High and low power. Some radios have a high, medium, and low power. That just determines the output level, the power level, the wattages of the radio. Number 3, save. On some radios, it might say BAT save or battery save. This is a battery saver option. And what that does is it determines how often the radio is actually listening for transmissions. So when you set that menu option, it's just a level of 1, 2, 3, or 4. The higher it goes, the more it's going to try to save battery, which means it doesn't scan and listen as often or as quickly for transmissions. What that means is, and the reason that I always turn it off, is when you have it on, if somebody starts talking, it may not actually hear and listen, and then you wouldn't hear that person talking for a second or so after they began talking. So if you notice that when people talk, always the first second or two of what they're saying is cut off, assuming that they're pressing the button on their radio and transmitting correctly, it may be that you have that battery save option enabled and the radio is not hearing the first word that they're saying. So I always keep that off. Vox, VOX. This allows the radio to automatically start transmitting when it hears a voice, and the level that you set, the number that you choose, is how sensitive it hears and listens. So that would be handy if you have maybe a external headset plugged in and you don't want to have to push the button. It replaces pushing a button to talk. When it hears your voice, it will start transmitting. That usually does not work out very well because then you're transmitting when you burp and do say other things. It hears other noises. It's going to start transmitting. Doesn't work very well on the inexpensive radios. WN, wideband, channel bandwidth. So she's telling me what these are. Channel bandwidth, wideband or narrowband. Now the difference between wideband and narrowband, I should make a video about that. Basically allows you to set wideband or narrowband. So what you set it at depends on what everybody else is using. ABR. Number 6, ABR, automatic backlight. That determines how quickly that backlight turns off and on. You saw it just turned off. I think that's in seconds. You can turn it off and the backlight would never turn on. I like to keep mine at 5 or 10 seconds. The quicker you turn off that backlight, or if you never turn it on at all, the less often the backlight is on, the longer your battery will last. TDR is the dual receive feature. As you know, these radios have 2 frequency lines. That means you can listen to 2 frequencies at the same time. So right now I'm on these 2 different frequencies. It is actually receiving on both frequencies at the same time. So if somebody were to speak on either of these frequencies, I would hear them. Unless I turn that off. Now, even though it still shows the 2 frequencies, because you can't ever turn off the 2 displays because you can still switch between them using A and B to talk. But for receiving, now that TDR is off, it is only receiving on the one that I have selected by using A and B. It is now receiving because TDR is off on the lower frequency. It is now receiving on the upper frequency, as you can see by the little arrow. And if I turn TDR back on, it is now listening on both frequencies, and you can see the little S, I think that is there. I can hardly see it. That's supposed to tell us that it's listening on both. Beep, that is the keyboard beep, so that every time you press a button, it beeps. If you turn that option off, it's now silent operation. So I'm going to leave mine off because it does get annoying. TOT, talk out timer. That is how long you can talk by pressing the button before it will stop transmitting. You can change that in increments of 10 or 15 seconds at a time. So when it is set at 60 seconds, that means I can press and hold and talk and jibber jabber on with the press to talk button and transmit for 60 seconds. At 60 seconds, it will simply stop transmitting. The reason for that is if you accidentally press and butt dial the PTT button, you don't want it transmitting all day long, so it will automatically turn it off. Helps keep the radio from overheating and keeps the long talkers at bay. RDCS is Receive Digital Coded Squelch. DCS is a tone, the same as the CTS tones. I'm going to go through all of these together. RDCS, RCTCS, it's a tone, what some people call a privacy tone, that is not private. Those tones are also needed for accessing repeaters. R, for both of these, DCS tone and CTCS tone, means receive. T, DCS, and T, CTCSS means transmit. So if you have a T, CTCSS, or DCS tone set, it will include that tone in your transmission when you're transmitting. R means it is listening for that tone. And to set one, you just select the option, scroll through, and pick the tone that you need to use. And the way that you know what tone to use is the person that is telling you a tone is required tells you what tone to use, or if you're using it to connect to a repeater, the repeater owner tells you what tone to use. Voice, this changes our Baofeng lady's voice to different languages. or you can turn it off. I'm going to turn mine off to avoid distraction because she sounds so sexy. ANI ID is a code, it's a number basically that you can only set in the software, like if you're using Chirp, and that's used to send an ID that just shows on the screen of another radio that's able to receive it or that's able to display it. If you hit the alarm button, most people would never have a need for using ANI ID. DTMF-ST, digital DTMF are tones, the phone tones that you hear when pressing, like dialing a phone, and the different settings determine when that ID is heard and which it uses. So there's different settings you can set these at. I don't know why mine were on before, I keep them off. S code is signal code, and again, using the software only, you can put a code, a number in, and that ties to a ID that is sent when you select another menu option number 19, which we will be at in a minute. Not very useful. Most people would not use that. SC, that is the scanning method. This tells the radio what to do when it's scanning through frequencies or channels, and it hears something. So the scanner scans through everything, either frequencies or channels that you set, and this determines what it does when it hears something. TO means that when it hears something, it will stop and listen for a set amount of time. CO means that once the person stops talking, it will start scanning again. That's usually the most useful setting. And SE means that when it hears something, the scanner will turn off. It will stay on that channel. PTT ID. That is the push-to-talk ID, which can send numbers, tones, like telephone dialing tones. And that's what you set in menu item number 17. So you can set it to send those codes either EOT is end of transmission, so when you're let go of the push-to-talk button. BOT, beginning of transmission, so when you first start talking. Both, start and end, or, as is most desirable, off, none. PTTL time, lag time, so that is how long in milliseconds the radio waits from before it sends the PTT ID that you would have set in the previous menu. So if you had it set to beginning of transmission, it would wait 3 milliseconds before sending it. You will probably never have a need for any of that. MDF, MDF-A, and MDF-B. This determines what is shown on the screen here. Now I think now I'm in VFO mode. When you're in VFO mode, it's always going to show a frequency, but if you switch to channel mode by pressing the VFO/MR memory channel button, now I'm in channel or memory mode. These two menu options, MDF-A and MDF-B, determine what will show up there. So right now, A and B are both set to show the name. I could change them to show the channel number that it's assigned or the frequency. So if I change MDF-A to frequency, it's now showing the frequency on A. B is still showing the channel. Normally I would keep them both on name, but one thing that a lot of people do, and sometimes I'll do this, I will set the top line to show my name that I have set, and you can only set these names using the software. Otherwise it would just say channel 1, channel 2, channel 3. And I'll set the lower name to show the frequency. And then when I put both A and B on the same channel, I know the name and the frequency, thusly. You know what channel it's on because you can see the tiny little channel numbers over there. So let me show you how that works. MDF-A, so I'm going to have the top show the name. I'm going to have B show the frequency. So now I can see the name for channel, whatever that is, 4, and the frequency for channel, whatever that is, 9. Doesn't do me a lot of good, but if I use the AB button, go down to the lower one, and put them on the same channel, now you can see that they're both on channel 4. They are synchronized. So now, as long as they're on the same channel, I know that that channel name is on this frequency. Very handy. BCL, busy channel lockout. If you were to enable that, that means that when you transmit, If that channel is already in use or somebody is already transmitting on that channel, if there is a carrier present, the radio will not allow you to transmit because it is busy. So the channel is locked out. As soon as someone stops talking, then it will allow you to talk. I like to keep mine set to on so that I can step on people and talk over them when they need it. Auto lock. This makes the radio lock automatically after 8 seconds. I don't think you can change that 8 seconds. So when that is on, the radio will simply lock itself automatically, requiring you to then hit after 8 seconds, and then you would need to hit the unlock key to press any buttons. I usually have that set on so that when I'm out using the radio, if I hand the radio to somebody to listen, I don't want them accidentally pressing buttons, and I don't have to manually lock it. It will lock itself, but for purposes of this demonstration, it's irritating me, so I've got it set to off. Shift D, SFT, D, and offset. These are both for setting up repeaters. SFT, Shift D is for setting up a repeater in VFO mode or frequency mode. Offset you use when in channel mode. Both of these would take an entire video to go over them and explain them. So I'm not going to do that here, but that's what they are for. 27 mem channel. That's for setting and saving channels. You enter the information in VFO mode and then you save it here. This also would take an entire video to go over everything and how to do it, but if you were to do it, you would do it here. Del channel, delete channel, that's an easy one. That's how you delete channel information. So you go to the channel that you want to delete. If there's already a channel programmed, it will start with a CH. If there's no channel programmed, it will just be a number. So channel 125, there's nothing programmed in there because there's no CH there. But channel 1, there is. So you would delete it by selecting it and then hitting menu to confirm. I do not want to do that. WT LED, that sets the back screen there for when it's in wait mode or standby mode. You change that by selecting the color. And there you get a pretty purple, orange, blue, RX. It's the same thing. It changes the color when you are RXing or receiving. So when it's receiving a signal, you set the color there. TX, same thing. When you transmit, this selects the color that the screen will show. I usually set it to off because when I'm transmitting, I can't see the screen. So that just saves a little tiny bit of power by turning it off because I don't care what color it is when I transmit. AL MOD, alarm mode. This is actually an important one. As you know, the Baofeng has a alarm or call button, and when you press it, it makes a stupid sound. And that menu option, AL mode, number 32, determines what that alarm does. Sight means you only hear it here on the radio. Tone means it transmits a tone over the air. I'm not sure what that tone is. Code means it transmits a number code, like a dial tone code. I don't know what that code is. I don't care because I put it on sight so that if I accidentally hit that button, it doesn't actually transmit to anywhere because I don't want to transmit. You may have heard other radios transmitting those stupid alarms over the air. You can prevent that from happening by setting the AL alarm mode to sight. Next option is band number 33, and if you're in frequency mode, I don't understand what it does. The description says that it shows the low band limit frequency on the screen when you transition from UHF to VHF. I don't understand what or why it's there. As far as I can tell, the way that I use the radio, it doesn't make a difference. Not saying that it doesn't do anything, but for me and my usage, it makes no difference. TDR A and B. When you have the TDR enabled, which was way back on option 7, I think. So when you've got the dual band receiving, so when you're receiving on both frequencies at the same time, if you have that enabled, this determines which line, A or B, top, bottom, A, B, determines which line the radio returns to after it receives a signal. So off means it will stay on the frequency, I think, will stay on the frequency that it received something on. So when TDR is enabled, right now, top line A is selected with a little arrow there. If it were to receive something on B, it would switch down to that. That means that when I press the push to talk button, it will transmit on that frequency. So when you push to talk, when you transmit, it transmits on the frequency or the channel that has the little arrow. So right now, if I were to push the push to talk button, it would transmit on this channel. This option says, okay, when it receives on either channel, what does it do? Does it switch to that channel and keep listening? Meaning that when you push the talk button, you would be transmitting on basically whoever last talked, or does it switch back to A or switch back to B? So leaving it off means that when somebody talks, somebody transmits, if you have the TDR enabled, it will just stay on whichever one last transmitted on, or it will switch back to the top or the bottom, whichever you select. And that determines when you transmit which one it's transmitting on. Clear as mud. STE is a squelch tail eliminator. It's supposed to get rid of that sound that you hear when you let go of the button. The other radio has to support it also, and this is for when you're in simplex mode, talking radio to radio. RP-STE is repeater squelch tail eliminator. That has to be supported on the repeater, and it does the same thing. It just makes it so you don't hear the kerchunk sound at the end of the transmission, but the repeater has to support it also. RPTRL is the amount of time, I think in milliseconds, that it waits or listens. I don't know exactly. My apologies, I have failed you. That's how long it waits after you let go when you're transmitting before it sends the tone that enables the squelch tail eliminators. Power on message. What do you see when you turn the radio on? On mine, it probably went by pretty quick. I put in a custom message that I put in using the software. You can change that to a custom message, full, which didn't seem to do much. Those are the only two choices. So custom message that you can only enter using the software like chirp, or full, which is I guess just the default message from the Baofeng man. Roger, the most important setting of all, the Roger beep. It's a on or off setting, and that enables the Roger beep at the end of your transmission. When you let go, it makes a little beep sound so that the people listening to you know that you're actually done talking. Very important feature to have because so many people love to hear it. If anybody ever tells you to turn your Roger beep off or that they are annoyed by the Roger beep, tell them it is their problem, not your problem. If they don't like it, they don't have to listen to you. And finally, option number 40, reset all. When you screw everything up, this is your last resort to clear out everything on the radio and start over. There's two different options. All means everything. Back to the factory defaults, just like when you took it out of the box for the first time. VFO only sets some of the frequencies and the menu options it resets. Doesn't erase channels. I think that's the main difference, where all wipes it clean. So be careful when using either of those, and you would only want to use those when you really screw things up. Did you die of boredom? If you did, please ask a family member to leave a comment and let us know. If you have questions, if I left something out, if I went too fast, if it didn't make sense, if I said something wrong, leave a comment below. Dickhead comments. Comments answering questions that nobody asked. Off-topic comments. Don't go asking a question about repeaters and cars on this video about menu options. Or comments with opinions that nobody cares about. Those comments will all be deleted or, better yet, pinned to the top for everyone to laugh at and make fun of. So bear that in mind.